still love that music. I don't know. It kind of like is like some good mid-show tempo. Let's start with the running back room. Branson Robinson out. Not the same knee as before, but still out. I believe that this is the time where Nate Frazier is going to have to get the ball in his hands more. And we've seen him more over the last 2 games. So with Branson out, it's Nate Frazier time.
There are a lot of people that have been asking for more Nate Frazier. I think Georgia's going to have to do that now because of this injury to Branson Robinson. And it changes a lot of different things. You saw last week, Trevor Etienne emerging as the goal line carry, getting that late touchdown here as someone on this panel predicted on DawgNation at large. And so I think if you're Georgia in the running game, look, there have been a lot of people that want to see Georgia run the football more. They've got to be more effective when they run the football. I think it goes to both the offensive line, and yes, they're still without Tate Ratledge. I don't expect Tate to play this week. But the running backs, I think, have to do a little bit of a better job creating those explosive plays. We've seen Trevor do that at times this year. We saw Nate Frazier do it a little bit in the Clemson game. I'm interested in seeing how Nate Frazier's confidence grows as Georgia gives him more and more of a runway. And look, there were some fumbling issues at practice when it came to Frazier, and so we'll see if that becomes an issue for him. But Georgia needs Nate Frazier now as they are thin in that running back room with Branson Robinson expected to be sidelined for a couple of weeks.
I mean, dog, you literally only had to wait about 15 more minutes to throw your Trevor Etienne touchdown punch, but I guess it is what it is. Maybe not the way that we had imagined Nate Frazier would get more playing time, but now this is what it's going to come down to and possibly what's going to be the defining game of his freshman year. So it's now or never for Nate Frazier. Definitely going to see him on Saturday. Let's move on to the defensive line. Injuries have just been the Achilles heel for this position group. Even though most of them are back, we can assume that they're still not back at full health. I mean, Texas has the 5th best rushing offense in the SEC and has only allowed 6 sacks all season. Even with people back, is this defensive line ready to go toe-to-toe with Texas?
We're going to find out on Saturday, and I think this group, more than any other position group, is going to determine the outcome of this game. This defensive line has been under question, but I actually think with everything that has happened to them in terms of the injury front, this group has played really, really well. Nazir Stackhouse has been great for this team. Jaron Ingram-Dawkins, you can make a case, has been Georgia's best defensive player, leading the team in tackles for loss and sacks this season. I think you're going to see more out of Mykel Williams this week. They've intentionally, I think, been slow playing his role in terms of how much he's been able to play as he continues to recover from an ankle injury. Kristen Miller has been able to do a little bit more. Maybe you finally get a chance to see Jordan Hall this week. He has not yet played in a game this season for Georgia, but Georgia needs this defensive line to show up and stand out on Saturday. And if they're able to do that, I think they're going to go a long way in making Texas one-dimensional, and that's going to be huge for this Georgia defense as they try to get as many stops as they can against one of the more potent units in college football.
I do think one of the people that you have to really question in this position is Jordan Hall. We haven't seen him all season long. He's dressed out for some games, but if this is the game where he is able to come back, can he really make that big of a difference having not seen the playing field all season long?
Right, and I think you expect if he is going to try and play this week, and he's listed as probable on the depth chart, on the availability report, it's at most 15, maybe 20 snaps that he's able to give you there. So there are a lot of people eager to see what Jordan Hall looks like. This was supposed to be a big year for him, but injuries have obviously sidelined him through the first 6 games. And this is a guy, as the season gets longer, you need fresh bodies on that defensive line. So whatever Jordan Hall is able to give them, they're going to gladly take this week.
Doing my best Cash Jones impression. Let's put it up on the screen here. Cash Jones, Texan native. He did it. Let me just say, if somebody hasn't put this on a t-shirt yet, what are you doing? I would have this t-shirt right now. I know Cody Chaffins would have this t-shirt right now. Shout out to Cash Jones for being the one to do it, and I think it makes it a little bit more acceptable that he is from Texas.
I'm going to take you guys behind the curtain here. This was Nat Cash Jones on his own volition, just deciding, hey, I'm going to throw horns down. He was asked, badgered, pestered by a reporter into doing it, so make of that what you will there. Cash Jones did talk about his family ties. He's got a sister that went to Texas Tech. He grew up an A&M fan, sort of in the shadow of Johnny Mansell, so you certainly understand why there's no love necessarily there for Texas. But as someone who tweeted the video of Cash throwing the horns down and has gotten to see Texas fans, what a bunch of babies these people are. I mean, you make it worse on yourself by getting so worked up over this innocuous little thing. It's the Tyrion Lannister quote that jumps to mind for me. Never forget what you are, because the rest of the world will surely not. Wear it like an armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. The reason that people love throwing horns down and enjoy seeing it so much is because Texas fans routinely get so upset by it. If you simply didn't get upset by this meaningless little taunt, you wouldn't see players do it. You wouldn't have seen someone ask Cass Jones, hey, can you throw the horns down for you there? So Texas fans, grow up. It's not that big of a deal. It's not an insult in the way that you seem to think it is. So, and I'm someone who likes horns up, but horns down after this week, I certainly have a better understanding for it moving forward.
Was it you? Was it you that asked him to do it? I didn't think so, but I just wanted to make sure. You had like this look on your face that maybe you were trying to tell us that it was you. But it wasn't? Okay.
Kaylee is just outing herself that she doesn't watch all our wonderful DawgNation content on YouTube, where we have the full Cass Jones video up to watch, and you can maybe make out who the character is.
It's harder to hear the other side than the person at the microphone. So it's not as big of a deal as you're making it out to be. But last thing on this, do we think that Kirby Smart made him run a little bit extra for doing this in the press conference?
I do not think Kirby Smart was all that happy to see this. Knowing that this is now potential bulletin board material, I don't think that Kirby Smart was all that thrilled that this happened.
Okay, speaking of people not being thrilled about things happening, Georgia and Georgia Tech will be hosted in Mercedes-Benz Stadium next year, with Georgia Tech being the home team. And a lot of people are not happy about this. I actually don't mind it, because it's not like they're taking the game away from Sanford. It's being taken away from Bobby Dodd. What are your thoughts on this? Are people making a bigger deal out of it than it really is?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you love playing in Bobby Dodd. That Georgia hasn't lost in Bobby Dodd Stadium since 1999. And so moving this game to Mercedes-Benz maybe changes the rivalry a little bit. I do think maybe part of this was done because of the fact that Georgia lost a home game due to COVID, and so maybe this evens it out a little bit. It does allow for more fans to get into the stadium, as there's just a larger seating capacity at Mercedes-Benz Stadium than there is Georgia Tech. And look, that's already sort of a Georgia home game, or at least a neutral site game, with how many Georgia fans invade Atlanta the week after Thanksgiving, as always, there. So I'm interested in seeing the impact that this has on the rivalry there. I would expect them to treat this as a Georgia Tech home game, and thus the recruiting thing is not all that different, and it's not treated like, say, a Clemson or a Florida neutral site game has been in recent years. But look, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a great place to watch a football game. It's one of my favorites. I love this rivalry dearly. It means a lot to me that they continue to play this game. And so I am at least interested in seeing what kind of impact moving clean old-fashioned hate into Mercedes-Benz Stadium has on it.
I'm not going to lie. I love a climate-controlled game, especially for Georgia Tech. That falls in late November when it's really, really cold. I'll take a climate-controlled game all day long. Last thing, told y'all we would get to Dan Lanning. On Monday, Dan Lanning went on a podcast and revealed he intentionally put 12 men out on the field in one of the final plays of Ohio State and Oregon to prevent Ohio State from getting long yardage and also to run time off the clock. Well, let's just say the NCAA was quick to be like, nah, dog, ain't happening. So now, in the final 2 minutes of any half, if the defense has 12 players actively participate in the down, the offense can choose to have the game clock reset to the time that had been displayed at the snap, along with the 5-yard penalty. Okay, you gotta give Dan Lanning his flowers here, because that's honestly so genius, and everyone talks about how much of a defensive-minded coach Dan Lanning is. That only goes to prove that. I don't know if maybe it was the brightest idea to go out and say it to the world. I do think that he deserves all the credit, but I'm really shocked at how quick the NCAA was to put a stop to this.
I've got a prop here. I'm calling cap on this. I don't think that this is some masterstroke idea from Dan Lanning here. I think it just happened to work out in his favor. There's video of him saying, I can't believe we have 12 men on the field, and maybe it's a little bit more expletive than the way that I just presented it there. I I think that this is something where he saw the reaction to it as people saying, oh, like, this is so smart that he did this intentionally and just sort of, like leaned into it there. And now it has become a much bigger deal there. But I do want to give Dan his overall flowers. This was a huge win for Lanning, beating Ohio State as an underdog at home. This was a game not many people expected Oregon to win. And so for them to get this, especially Lanning, who hadn't really had a signature win to this point, for it to come in the manner in which it did, I think is huge for him, gives them a huge edge over Ohio State moving forward. I think that's very much going to help Oregon in its chase to get into the college football playoff, and that's massive for Dan Lanning and what he is trying to build out there. So kudos to Dan Lanning for getting this win, but I'm throwing a flag and calling cap on this genius move that he intentionally had 12 men on the field.
Are you calling Dan Lanning a liar?
I'm not calling him a truther.
That was good. Well, we're going to keep that on record because that's what I got out of that. All right,